My name is Linda Matthews, and I'm 54 years old. I've lived in Dallas, Texas for most of my life, in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the summers are long and the evenings are filled with cicada songs. For many years, my life followed a simple rhythm: work, home, caring for my family, and occasionally having dinner with my friends from church. But lately, I had begun to feel something missing. Not romance, not drama, but purpose. After my husband passed away 5 years ago, I poured everything into my son, Ethan, who is now 26. He recently started a small contracting business with his childhood best friend, Jake Sullivan, a polite young man who'd spent more weekends at our home growing up than I could count. One Saturday morning in early spring, Ethan asked if I could let Jake use our garage to store some tools and paint equipment. "Sure, honey," I said, happy to help. Jake arrived soon after, tall and broad-shouldered from years of hard work, his face kind and easy to smile. "Hey, Ms. Matthews. Hope you don't mind me making a mess for a few days," he said cheerfully. I laughed and told him that the garage had seen worse. What I didn't expect was how that small favor would ripple into a chain of moments that changed how I saw myself. A few days later, I was out in the backyard trying to fix a leaning fence when Jake came by again. He saw me struggling and said, "Ms. Matthews, that's not how you do it. You've got to bend over a bit and use the hammer from this angle, see?" He demonstrated patiently, showing me the right way to anchor the post. I chuckled at my own clumsy attempt, and he grinned. "You're tougher than half the guys I work with," he teased. It was just friendly humor, but his energy made me laugh in a way I hadn't in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Jake dropped by often, helping with odd repairs around the house, things I'd been putting off for years. Fixing the porch light, repainting the mailbox, trimming the hedges. Each time, he'd bring that same calm warmth and easy humor that made me feel seen. Not in a romantic way, but as a person who still mattered. One afternoon as he packed up his tools, he said, "You know, Ms. Matthews, you should think about teaching a gardening class. You've got such a knack for it." I smiled, brushing dirt off my gloves. "Me? Oh, I don't think anyone would care about my old tricks." But he shook his head. "Are you kidding? People pay to learn what you do naturally." That night, his words echoed in my mind. It had been years since anyone encouraged me like that. Maybe it was time to share what I loved again. The next week, I signed up to host a small gardening workshop at the local community center. I was nervous at first, but when the first class began, something inside me reignited. The students were kind, curious, and eager to learn. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. A few weeks later, Ethan and Jake stopped by to help me set up a few planter boxes for my students. "Wow, Mom, look at you," Ethan said proudly. "Didn't think you'd turn into Dallas's next gardening guru." We all laughed, but in that laughter, I felt a quiet pride blooming. It wasn't about fame or success, it was about feeling useful again. One day, after a long class, Jake stayed behind to help me clean up. "You know, Ms. Matthews," he said, "you're kind of a hero to me." I blinked, surprised. "A hero? Oh, come on, Jake." But he nodded earnestly. "When my mom passed away, you were the only one who kept checking in on me. You brought food, you asked how I was doing. You didn't have to, but you did. That meant everything." I felt a lump in my throat. I had forgotten about those small gestures years ago, but clearly he hadn't. "You were just a kid," I whispered. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." He smiled softly. "You did more than that. You showed me what real kindness looks like." In that moment, I realized something profound. We never truly know how deeply our small acts can touch others. Jake had grown from a boy into a thoughtful man, and somehow in helping him, I had helped myself heal too. Over time, our little community project grew. The local newspaper featured my classes, calling them a garden of hope. I received dozens of messages from people saying how they'd found comfort through gardening after loss or hardship. The garage that once stored Jake's tools now stored donated pots, seeds, and supplies for families in need. Life had taken a turn I never planned, but one I was grateful for. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in gold and coral, Jake stopped by to drop off some lumber. "The community center's expanding the garden," he said proudly. "They want to name it after you, the Matthews Greenhouse." I froze, tears welling up in my eyes. "Oh, Jake. I don't deserve that. You do, he said firmly. You gave this town something beautiful. I turned toward him, humbled, and whispered, You gave me a reason to try again. That night, I stood by the window, looking at the moonlight touching the rows of plants in my backyard. My husband's memory lived in every flower, my son's laughter echoed in every corner, and Jake's kindness had reminded me that life doesn't stop giving, even when it feels like it has nothing left. The phrase, bend over, that started it all wasn't about what it sounded like. It was about learning to bend, not break. About resilience, rediscovery, and growing again after years of stillness. I realized that the garden, much like me, had been waiting for the right season to bloom again. Today, when people come to my classes, I tell them, no matter your age, your story isn't over. Sometimes, it just needs a little sunlight, and a friend who reminds you how to plant again. That friend, for me, was my son's best friend, Jake Sullivan. And I will always be thankful that he walked into my life and said those words that changed everything. Bend over. Like this, so you can see the roots.